Welcome to this video about consuming the Azure Cognitive Services new search API. To accomplish that, you first have to install the SDK or the NuGet package or however you want to call it. It's just a wrapper around the HTTP client that immensely simplifies the interaction with the API. Cognitive search, new search. Microsoft Azure Cognitive Services search Bing. No, that has only 76 downloads. Okay, it's this one here. So for this application, we will stick to the default Bootstrap styling. Go to index. Type text, class, form, control, column, let's just say free. Now we have to define a string. We call it a search string. And we've defined it as a fully implemented property. So prop full and then tab tab. The backing field is called search string with your underscore to start. So, and of course we bind it to this field. Also bind event on input so that it is updated with every keystroke. Okay. Then we have to create the object of the new search client. Call it new search client. Now I'm going to import a namespace. So we will initialize this object in the initialized async method. New search client, and the constructor takes okay, the service credentials. Okay, so the new API key service credentials, and this clause also defines a constructor, of course. And the question is, okay, and here we have to pass a string for the configured API in Azure. To do that, I'm going to app-settings.json. Here I'm creating a new chapter. I call it API keys. News search key. Now, this is the part that I'm not going to show you how you can configure it in Azure. It is really simple. I will link the Microsoft documentation for that. Now, how can we retrieve this the string that is stored in this field here? We have to inject iConfiguration config. And now, because config has a index defined, we can pass first API keys and then API keys new. I just call it key, it's simpler. Otherwise I have to memorize all this. Also API and then keys. Okay, API, and here keys, not in capital, and then here key, right? Yeah. So, and yes, as I said, here you have to put the retrieved key from Azure. Now we have instantiated the object and we reference it over this field here. Now, whenever we change the value of this property, we want to make the search happen. Now, searching is of course asynchronous. We can't have await here because we can't mark it as async. And there is also another problem which lays more in the API. A lot of the cognitive services APIs from Microsoft are very cheap and you can really hammer them. They are like, you have indefinite like requests. This one is a bit different. You only have 3. So you have different pricing tiers as always in Azure. And the free one allows only for 3 calls per second and 1,000 in a month. So that's not much. So we have to throttle the input here a bit of the user. Now, how can we do that? Therefore, we can define a timer. Timers can either be in the system.timers namespace or system.threading namespace. We are going to use the system.timers. It's like the normal timer. The other one is just timer. So now, new system timer. Here it takes, so the constructor is overloaded. It takes the milliseconds, I think, in for the interval. So we just give it half a second. Now this timer will fire every half second. But we also have to say that the auto reset equals false. If we wouldn't say auto reset equals false, the timer would invoke, like it would fire its assigned delegates every 500 seconds. Here we don't want that this happens automatically, so we have to manually reset the timer. Now, the bespoke event handler that will be fired every 500 milliseconds if we start a timer is of type event handler timer arguments or something. System. Okay, elapsed event handler. Then it takes an object as first parameter and the elapsed event args as a second one. Now, what are we willing to do in here? As always, because this is on a different thread, we have to call invoke async. Here we are going to define a function task. Now, let's just say if the search term or the search string with the Elvis operator, so if it is not null and if the length is greater than, let's say, 3, then we are going to make the search, to call the search function. Therefore, we have to define the search function. As I've told you, it is asynchronous. Async task, I just call it get news. Now, we also have to define the news, which is an object that, of course, stores the news. I call it news. Here I'm going to import the namespace too. So this news is set in here equals await. Now we call it news search client. Yeah, now I've told you that it wraps an HTTP client, so we see it here. To call the API, you have to go to news, which is a property, and then a property of type iNews operations, and here you can call search async. You have to give the search term. And the method has defined endless default parameters, so accept language, and we have to set accept language, which takes a string to United States English, and also the market to United States and English, because otherwise I would like get everything in German, because that's a browser default. Okay, so we have that. Now I've told you about this throttling mechanism that we are going to build with the timers. Yeah, okay, let's just build that. So, okay, if search string is greater than 3, we are just going to invoke this method, await it, and now we also have to call status changed because it's from a different thread. And always, if you update the UI from a different thread, you have to call status changed. So, but now we don't start the timer. We could start the timer right now. Then we would just like make the request up after half a second. It's not that good of an idea. So first I go in here and say timer stop, and then timer start. Now, if the timer isn't started yet, stop won't do anything, and then we start the timer. Now, the whole idea about this is we set the value, we stop it, and then we start a timer. Now, if we don't set the value now for 500 milliseconds, we will make the search. If we then change the value again, we'll have to wait another 500 milliseconds. So that's the whole point. So that the user for 500 milliseconds has to like do nothing, no keystrokes, nothing, and then we will make the search. So just to throttle it down, not that the user makes a keystroke and every time we make a new search. So yeah, that's that. And then, okay, of course we have to enumerate over the news. News is not a collection, but it has a property that is a collection. So yeah, we can make that. Now, I've told you that I'm going to stick with Bootstrap, so we will define Bootstrap Cards. So if news is not null, then for each var new news article, now the naming is not perfect, in news, and the property is value. Yeah, okay. Yeah, the naming is not perfect here in this SDK either. So yeah, value is a collection because it is of type iList. Now cards in Bootstrap class card, because per default they have a display block, but I want to make it display inline block so that they are not not that every card is getting a new line. And I have also to set the width. So just say 300. Yeah, just 350 pixel. So now the most important thing, or the most attractive thing, is always the image. Here I am going to say news first attribute source, and then news article image dot content URI. Here I'm going to use the Elvis operator too, because maybe some news article are getting retrieved that don't have an image at all. Now card body, card title, news article dot headline, and then make a description. Now the card text, news article dot description. So yeah, that's that. Okay, no, first of all I have to like copy in my my connection string, of course. Therefore I'm just going to take it away for a minute. I'm setting it so now I set it. Los Angeles. Okay. We are getting the news, but we are not getting the image. Go to the browser tools. Where is it? Here. Image. Okay. Do I need to define? Oh, of course, I completely forgot. The image has a class too. Card image. Oh, can I? Top. Okay. So restarted. Los Angeles. Ach, again, no images. Card image top, but the source, okay. It looks like the source, like this here, equals null. So I'm just setting a breakpoint here to inspect the news object. Okay. So yeah, that's also, if you don't specify, it will all just return the 10 most like promising news, or the 10 nearest one. So image. Okay, so there is everything null. Expect the thumbnail content URL. Okay, so I just have to go here with the thumbnail and the context URI. So dot thumbnail content. Oh no. What was the property called? IntelliSense is striking. So go to definition. Now news. I don't see it. Thumbnail. No, it was not. It was thumbnail. No. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm too tired for it. It was first image, and then thumbnail, and then content. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, the Elvis operator, I don't use it now. But maybe the video. I mean, the video is longer anyways. I'm just so to demonstrate that we have the throttling mechanism here. I say display name, and now here I'm setting the display name. Display name equals search string, and now here I'm just telling the user news for, so that we see that the throttling mechanism works. Okay, so I won't. What's happening now? So I won't type Los Angeles again, because if you type Los Angeles, we always get the NBA and Los Angeles Lakers stuff. So I'm typing New York, New York. So have you seen it? It took 500 milliseconds to set it here, and it also took 500 milliseconds to go to the method that does the request, and then of course the request takes also time. Now here you see the 10 news, a lot of American football, and a lot of sports in general. Maybe just take sports as a default category, or maybe just take like the newest news. I can't imagine that like New York only has. Oh well, okay, this is not news. Yeah, okay, so yeah, you just see it. It works. It's cool, but don't forget it's very expensive. It's unbelievably expensive, if you ask me. The other APIs are way more like price worthy, and yeah. Okay, so thank you very much for your attention.